It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Thursday, November 21st, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that really wishes the Flyers showed up in that third period.
Well, it was a shooting gallery.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit fanduel.com to get started. And to keep up with all of our episodes and us on socials, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter. And of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, this was a tough one. We were kind of iffy on whether Cam York would return in this one. He did not. Uh, Sam Urson is still out. Jamie Drysdale is still out. Emil Andre was skating, which is good, but still not in. And I really think this is starting to affect the results here.
Well, it's definitely affecting the results. They were tired. They had they were getting outshot. Dave Waitman told me they were getting outshot uh, from after late in the first period through the second to 8 minutes into the third, like 28-6.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I mentioned the third period specifically, and you look at, they technically had 4 shots on goal in the third period, but only 2 of them were scoring chances and none of
Right,
them were high danger. So
right.
that's the entire story right there. And I
Yep.
think, you know, I said this on Blue Sky, but Torts always preaches that a good offense comes from good defense, right?
It doesn't.
And not in this situation.
No, I mean it does if you have a stacked team like the Hurricanes. And even when the Flyers players are back and healthy, I've always disagreed with that because I feel like shot blocking takes it longer for you to get breakouts and everything else. Torts has this different thinking about it than I think what's actually reality.
Well, I think it does when you do rely on a better breakout, right? And that's what was missing here. The breakout
Yeah.
was atrocious,
Yes.
especially in the third period. And even when they did clear the puck into the neutral zone, the Canes just had the neutral zone clogged. So there was
Yeah.
really no way for the Flyers to get quality chances. Like they struggled to get in the offensive zone. And then when they did, there just wasn't anything there for them.
But there's things they could do. As an example, stop putting Owen Tippett on the top line. Mitchkov should be on the top line because he was making some passes that, again, his teammates were not up to getting. And if he was on the top line, at least he's passing to Konechny. There's a skill level there that he needs to have to get more points. Otherwise, you know, it's not gonna be to their advantage because Tippett's not doing anything.
Right, and I think there absolutely should be some adjustments, and you would think Tippett would have the skill to match up, but it's just not working for
No,
whatever reason, so they need
right.
to switch that up. I would say, like, another big issue was turnovers, right?
Oh yeah.
Eh, like, Carolina was just really good at forcing turnovers in this game in particular, and, the Flyers wound up with 25 giveaways in this game.
Yeah, I mean, Carolina's fast, and when they're fast and they play tight on you like that, they're looking to get the puck and go the other way, and they can. And that's the problem. And so, but also, I think Kale McCarr did set out, and I think they watched video because again, it doesn't matter who's on defense. The Flyers play it the same way. Now, with better guys, they'll play a little better. But Kale McCarr was like, "Hey, look, if they're going to clog up around the net and everything, we're going to keep passing the puck around, and we'll shoot from far away, and occasionally go behind the net." And they were doing that. Carolina was absolutely doing that.
Yeah, I think so. I think, it became less of an impact as the game progressed because we saw that the Flyers weren't able to really execute at 5 on 5, but the
Right.
power play execution Man, if they had just gotten something to go, that would have changed the course of the game.
Yeah, the last one was just abysmal. I mean, the one that went from one period to the next, it was just they never got it
Yeah.
going at all. Like it's just again, I don't know how long you go with just saying, "Don't worry, the power play will get better." Like I just change up the coaching. It's not hard to do. Give Rocky Thompson something else to do. That's all.
I do wanna talk about something very good from this game, and that was Ivan Fedotov, because I think that, even though maybe 1 or 1.5 of those goals he would have wanted back, but I really think he made some incredible saves, but he just shouldn't have had to make some of those
No,
saves.
he was dead tired too. Like that point
Yeah,
where he was laid out late in the second, like he just couldn't get up quick enough. He's a big guy. No, he was fine. I mean, again, yeah, he the one between the legs. He was the one that he had in the glove and then kind of went between the legs. He should have had that.
right,
Beyond
right.
that, there was just so much activity in front of him, and yeah, it's hard to blame him. I think he had a pretty good game.
Yeah, and I think, his style has continued to be controlled chaos, and I
Right.
think that it works for him for the
It
most
does.
part. And so I'm not gonna complain about it at all, and I think,
No.
given where we started, I think his trajectory has continued to be one of improvement, and I think that in this game in particular, just going above and beyond when he shouldn't have had to in the first place.
Right. Right. I mean, first period, it wasn't too bad. It just got a lot worse after that.
In terms of Travis Sanheim watch, literally, like, time watch,
Yeah.
um, 24-40 in this game,
All
so
right.
we're getting there. We're
Well,
getting
only because it
there.
was so far gone. I think they eased
Right,
up on it. I think that's
right.
why.
Yeah, interestingly, the defenseman with the second most minutes was Zamula in
Yeah.
this game with, a little over 20 minutes,
He was
and
pretty good. Like his retrievals were good. I felt like he was doing
yeah,
pretty good.
yeah, I think so too. Another, like, I wouldn't say, like, bright spot, but noticeable thing in this game, that was good to see, and I think that, you know, uh, there's definitely some issues at the dot. Noah Cates had a really, really rough game at
Oh
the
yeah.
dot, and,
Well, look,
I love
if you
him,
look,
but
yeah, me too. But if you looked at their centers, they were strong down the middle. Even Jack Drury, there's no break there. So like 1 through 4, extremely strong. That's why sitting Morgan Frost is idiotic.
yeah, he did get better as the game went on a little bit. He wound up being 6 for 12, um, in the end, and Paling was 9 for 15. He was
Yeah.
best on the team at the
Yeah.
faceoff
But
dot,
but we have to talk about that.
so
Like this team desperately needed Morgan Frost. He's not injured. You are making a big mistake not having him in the lineup. They are.
yeah, and I think at this point, he has a chip on his shoulder that he I think, sometimes that makes a guy play dangerous, and sometimes
Yeah,
it makes a guy step up, and I feel like with Frost, he's more of a step up than a play dangerous kinda guy.
correct. Yeah, I agree.
So I think that was, definitely an issue in this game. Again, to your point about Carolina and their skill through, the middle there.
Yeah.
I just, like, where did they go in that 3rd period, Russ?
They just were tired. It's like how many shots can you block? They're not full strength, but neither is Carolina. Like they're without Freddie Anderson, they're without Seth Jarvis. Like they have their own injuries too. But playing that system, some of those guys are just not built for it. And not every guy is built to block all those shots. And Carolina was stretching the ice. And they played in the Flyer zone a lot. I'm sure you looked at the report. I didn't even bother, but that's a big thing. That tires a team out, and they got tired.
Yeah, and it just means they weren't able to even have attempts offensively. I talked
Right.
about those stats for the 3rd period, but even overall, um, Owen Tippett, Joel Farabee, Tyson Forster, Scott Lawton, Travis Konechny, Bobby Brink, all with only 1 shot on goal in
I
this
mean,
entire game, and that's not enough.
I saw at least 3 from Tippett just completely miss the net on good scoring chances. Like, enough's enough. Like, you got to give these shots to somebody else.
Yeah. All right. I am super bummed out about this game, but there's more to talk about on today's show. We are
Sure.
going to talk about those David Jiricek trade rumors and what he was at his draft and a potential Flyers trade for him. Plus, we are going to look at draft eligible prospect Porter Martone. We are going to do that coming up next.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get 150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I would go with the Steelers over the Browns this week. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Some of the best concerts of the year take place in the fall, and it's my favorite time to head to a show. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for all your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite part of the Game Time app is that it's great for getting notified about last minute flash deals, and there's super deals so you know you're getting the best bang for your buck. Best of all, they have all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout when you activate the feature, and your tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through email. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. On tomorrow's show, we are going to, of course, be previewing the game against the Chicago Blackhawks and so much more. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, the name David Jiricek has resurfaced in the NHL ether. He was the sixth overall pick in 2022, if we recall, right after the Philadelphia Flyers took Cutter Gauthier
Mhm.
in that draft. Man, times have changed.
Oh, yeah.
But things have not worked out so well for him in the Columbus organization, and they just sent him back to the AHL. And although he has not requested a trade, trade rumors about him have been running rampant recently, especially given that Columbus picked up Dante Fabro off waivers, seems to be taking those minutes that Jiricek would have been in. So, Russ, like, what's your take on like what has gone wrong for him in Columbus?
Right. So it's a lot with the previous administration. Uh, they basically, I think it was at the start of last year. Can't remember if it was last year or this year. He thought he was going to make the team. They kind of made that overture that he was going to make the team. So he went and bought a not a condo, but I think he got an apartment for the whole year or something like that. And then a couple weeks later, he's being sent down. And while we all think, hey, these guys are just made of money, even as rookies because they're making much more than regular people, it's still a big expense. And so that I think got him mad. And then things didn't get better from there. This year, you have a different administration, different
Yep.
coach. And they're like, yeah, things aren't working out. And you have Don Waddell basically saying, yeah, we watched him a few games. We didn't like what we saw. And it's like, okay, but he's 20. He's
Right.
20 years old. Like, and understand what went on
And
here.
he's a
Like,
defenseman, right?
yes. And he's a big defenseman, which sometimes takes a bit. I saw some highlights the other day from Lake Erie, and he scored a monster of a slap shot goal or a one-timer goal. It was great. That's what I expect from him. Now, I don't think his offense will all translate. I don't. But he's big and he's physical and he's fast. And it just seems like Don Waddell doesn't have time for him. Now, maybe Dean Evison has said, I can't do anything with this guy, but it's not like he worked with him a lot. So right now he's a victim of circumstance. Part of it his fault, part of it's the administration. But in the end, he's 20 years old.
Right. So Last season, he played 43 games with Columbus, wound up with 10 points, and spent some time in the AHL, 29 games with the Cleveland Monsters, 19 points overall. So obviously, he was producing more
Right.
at the AHL level. It's kind of only natural, right?
Yeah, of course.
But
At that age, yeah.
yeah, and so far this season, he's only had 6 games with the Columbus Blue Jackets, only 1 assist on the board, and for an offensive defenseman, supposedly, that's kind of where the problem has been, but to your earlier point, he's very young. 20-year-old NHL defensemen aren't generally superstars and don't start producing until a little bit later. And so it does seem like to some degree that because of the changeover in coaching and management, and coupled with he seems to be on a slightly slower path of development, it's just square peg, round hole kind of circumstance for him now, right?
Yeah, but there's one other thing that I had just remembered. I think it was his rookie year, and they were going to he was asking to go back to Czechia, and they didn't want to let him. And so it was like, no, we want you here in case we have to call you up. And I think they should have realized at that time, you're not going to call up an 18-year-old, are you? Just because you drafted them high, but obviously they were. So I think things like that hurt development. So yes, do I think he could put up points? Yes. Do I think he could be physical? Yes. So he's not just an offensive defenseman because he could be big and physical too. And so that package is what is enticing. And obviously Columbus could use that, but they've just said we're done with him. And
Right.
he may be done with them too and just hasn't said it aloud, for the public, and that's fine. But I didn't like the quotes that I saw out in public. Let's just put it that way.
Sure. So, looking back at the 2022 NHL draft, we picked David Jiricek for the Flyers in our Locked On NHL mock
We did.
draft. And so, we're going to take a look at that video and see what Russ had to say on behalf of our show back then, right now.
With the 5th overall pick, the Locked On Flyers show select David Jiricek, the big Czech defenseman. Both Rachel and I feel like he is the guy that is going to be the selection of the Flyers if he is there. He's got size. He can be a top pairing defenseman that could help cure some ills down the road. You could start him in the AHL if you like. He could be a destroyer out there physically, but he's a terrific skater. He gets the puck up the ice. He can run a power play. He can do a lot of things, and he's still developing. So this could be a really good pick for the Flyers. It's a pivotal one for them for the next 3 to 4 years, I believe. So that's the selection. We'll see how it goes.
All right. So, we saw how it went. And
Well, I was going to say the good news is I don't think I've aged too much, so that's not bad.
it's only been a couple of years.
Come
But
on,
that being said, do you think what you said then holds up
Yes.
now? And do you think the fit with the Flyers holds up more?
Yeah,
important?
because Brad Shaw is really good with defensemen. Even if he
Mhm.
starts in Lehigh, he'll give him instruction. He won't just sit him down, give him instruction. Okay, kid, let's see what you can do, and then just say, And I know I'm making a little light of it, but essentially Columbus isn't going to do much else with him. So I think they would do a lot more, and I think they could get him on track. They got Helge Grans on track, and
He did.
and I'm not saying he was completely off track with the Kings, but clearly it took him a little time to develop in the AHL, and he would have with the Kings too. He just got thrown in a deal, and so it does show that with their defensemen and the guys who have been coming up, they have been developing.
So it's interesting you mentioned Brad Shaw and coaching the defenseman because I do think the right coach makes the biggest difference. And I also think player development wise, the Flyers have been slightly better with the defensemen than the forwards overall.
Right.
And so I do think there is a path to him getting maybe not to where the high expectations of being a top 5 pick were, but at least, a solid second pairing defenseman in the NHL.
Right.
Right. And so, we're now at this point where I know we just talked on the show yesterday about having like a backlog of defensemen to deal with because they have so many because of the injuries and, there's only so many spots. is now the right time to trade for him.
Yeah, because in 2 more years, you won't have Ristolainen. He'll probably get traded in a year. He could be a Ristolainen replacement. Now, maybe he won't be at that defensive level, but he's got size and snarl, and he'll give more offense than Ristolainen. So he could be that guy. And then, obviously Eric Johnson's not going to be there. We don't
Right.
think Zamula is going to be there.
Yep.
And chances are Nick Seeler won't be there. So, yes, you do it now. There's definitely the room for it. This is all part of rebuilding. And it's really hard to get a guy like this that you might be able to mold into something close to what he was supposed to be.
Sure. Now, the question then becomes, what's a good trade for him? Because to me, I think it's, an Ali Lixel level player, because that's where they're kind of borderline guys right now, plus a pick to Columbus for maybe one of the second rounders that
Yeah, I
the
don't think that
Flyers
will get
have.
it done. Because of where they drafted him and what he could be, they're not just going to do it for that, I don't think. I think it would be one of the second rounders, and I do think it would take another prospect, and then it would be somebody off the roster, like a Frost or somebody that the Flyers say, there's a little term. We don't really have any great plans for him. So I think it would be Frost a second, and then you're talking about another player. And
You think it would be
I
3
do.
assets?
I do. And maybe you get something back, maybe they give you a fourth back and
Right.
next year's draft, they say, well, we got to balance it with something. Okay. But I do think so, because again, this is a guy that doesn't make much money. So there's value there. He's producing at the AHL level. So you might be 6 months away or a year away from the NHL. So I do think because of that, and because you still have control over him, and it's not like Frost has a long contract. I mean, what does he have? One more year after this year?
He's an RFA next offseason.
Right. So that's it. So they get him, they evaluate him, and they can pay him. So I think that's a fair deal, because otherwise the Flyers have to figure out how to pay Morgan Frost anyhow. So
Yeah.
it does alleviate a problem. So I know on the surface it seems like, wow, that's a lot. But again, look what this guy could be. I mean, that's what you have to look at. And they're going to say that. They're not just giving him away, regardless of, what they're saying.
Well, I thought maybe since it's very clear they'd given up on him, that devalues him a little bit at least. So I think if it's Frost and that pick, to me, that's what I would offer the Flyers
Yeah, I mean,
at
they
that
might
point.
say, "Hey, do you have plans for, I don't know?" And you could say one of the guys, mid-range guys in Lehigh, and if they say no, then they'll throw them in.
Yeah,
They got a lot of guys in Lehigh, so it's not like
they do.
they'll be short a roster spot, and they got all these second-round picks. So
Yeah. Well, speaking of the draft, we are continuing our draft prospect profile series. Next, we're going to talk about Porter Martone.
Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 10 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks invented the flex pay, which means you can still cash out of your lineup if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Download the app today and use Locked On NHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Locked On NHL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. Prize Picks, run your game.
All right, Russ. So Porter Martone is a really interesting prospect up for next year's draft. He's a winger, 6'3", 207 pounds. He just turned 18 in October, so he's one of the older guys in this year's draft class. He's currently captain of the Steelheads in the OHL. They just moved from Mississauga to Brampton this season, so
Right.
I'm still getting used to saying
Yeah.
Brampton Steelheads as opposed to Mississauga. But he was also captain of the Canadian U18 team that won gold in last year's U18 tournament.
Yep.
He was third in the tournament in scoring, 17 points in 7 games. I think, he is raising some heads, and some people are saying he could challenge for the number one spot overall. Some people say that's absolutely nuts. You're fooling yourself. Like, what's your overall take on Porter?
Well, I mean, as I work on my list, he's definitely top four. He's not number one. So I can tell you that right now, at least in my eyes. Somebody else, they may say it, but I don't believe that's going to happen. I do like him. Obviously, his size and reach. He could be a really good passer. You could see he could actually make that kind of cross ice pass when he needs to. He's good at setting up scoring plays. He's really good on the power play. For that reason, he's good down low because he is a bigger guy. I do see once in a while he reaches a little bit for the puck on some passes to him, and sometimes that slows down his shot. But that's one of the only negatives I have on him, other than he's going to get stronger. But right now, he is able to overwhelm some guys, and that's something where you have to take that with a grain of salt with some of the points that he gets, because he is finding a lot of open space. He's not going to get that much open space to operate down the line. But I do like him, and there's other things I could say about him too.
Yeah, so far this season, he's off to a really good start
Hmm.
with 37 points in 18 games played so far, 16 goals, 21 assists as of now. But I will say he has slowed up a bit in the last couple of weeks. He was kind of off like gangbusters at the beginning of the
Right,
season. He doesn't have any goals since November 3rd. He has one game where he was just a playmaker and had 4 assists
right,
in this 2-week stretch. But other than that, pretty much nothing. And he also got a suspension for an illegal check in this 2-week spread. So he missed a game. He came back a little tentative, and he wasn't really sure where the line was anymore. I read a couple scouting reports from the last couple weeks, and like there's something off with his game right now. So I wonder about like consistency, and is he going to kind of get back on the horse for the rest of the season?
if he doesn't, he'll drop a bit, and and maybe even I'll have to make an adjustment, but that remains to be seen. There are guys, right now there's one prospect who's on like a 25 game goalless streak, and
Right.
he's supposed to be a top guy. So it's, you have to kind of look at these peaks and valleys and see. And this is where when you're projecting, it could become interesting and sometimes hard. So, yeah, the other things I like is, I mean, he could take a pass at speed, which is good. He's got a really good wrist shot. I mean, the wrist shot's excellent. And so, I look at all the tools and I'm like, okay, uh, he should have a big year this year. If he doesn't, will that take him out of the top 10? Could. Probably doesn't, but it could. And then if he does, then a team like the Flyers would probably be right there, because, as much as we say the Flyers need to get in the top 10 in this draft, they just might not, based on a lot of different factors. And so if you got him at, like, I don't know, 11, it'd be amazing. I don't think that's going to happen, but we've seen weirder
Right.
things happen in a draft year. But like, if the Flyers wanted to get this guy, they probably need to be in the top 5.
Yeah, and that is like a huge question, right? Because I think still at this point in the season, things could go either way with the
Right.
Flyers. I don't think we know yet. Obviously, they've been improving on average lately, but they're still not to the point where they're beating the really good teams,
Right.
right?
And I know what
So
fans are going to say. They're going to be like, no, you got to get a center or a defenseman here. And it's like, we have enough wingers. And it's like, well, are you going to have enough wingers in 3 to 5 years? That's what you have to look at. At some point, the
and you
wingers,
always need goal scorers.
right. The goal scoring is always at a premium, and the wingers are always going to have to be restocked like anything else. So you can't just say right now, because you have a lot of wingers, that you're not going to draft one, because it's not going to impact you for at least 3 years, maybe more, most likely more.
Right.
So yeah, goal scorers, that's what you look at.
Right. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how his season progresses again, with the ups and downs and the pressure, to be honest,
Yes,
of being in your draft year and the expectations at being what they are, especially for somebody projected to be a top 5 pick. I do think, continuing to watch like the little things in his game, because in your draft year, that's kind of what you're focusing on, right?
Right.
Fine tuning those little things in your game that are going to make you attractive across the board to NHL teams instead of just having one or two things in your arsenal. You got to be a multifaceted player these days to be a top pick.
Yeah, and I like that he shows his emotion on the ice. That's good. I think that's a positive. And yeah, he's what, 6'3". This guy's going to fill out. So that's something that's, pretty enticing. Again, not a lot of power forwards floating around the league that could score 25, 30 goals. It's just not.
Right. Well, we'll see how he does the rest of the season. We'll see where the Flyers end up, and if he's an option, we'll add him to the list of prospects that we've taken a look at it, and we'll keep adding to it as the season progresses. That'll do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with more Flyers news and a preview of the matchup against Chicago this weekend. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. You can send us your Flyers questions or thoughts via any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter and Blue Sky at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your teammates with daily tips from Steel and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.